7 times in the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I am, and then describes something in the physical world that we live in that he is. 7 times. Last week we looked at the bread of life. And this week, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. So the question I have is why? Why did Jesus refer to himself as the light of the world? And the one thing I want to do to start off is to look at how light and darkness is a theme throughout the scriptures. In the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God looked at the light and it was good. Then, with the Israelites wandering through the desert, God came down as a pillar of fire to guide the Israelites on their path at night. And then lastly, the Israelites, God said, I'm going to dwell among you in a tabernacle or in a tent that I want very specifically to be made a certain way. And in that tabernacle, I want there to be a lampstand that will shine and always be lit by the priests. That will be a source of light to my dwelling place. These are just a few examples of how light was used and taught to the Israelites and taught by God to us. The last thing I'd want to say about that is, whenever light is used in the Old Testament, it's almost always referred to as God's presence, his salvation, or his revelation. With that said, John chapter 8, Jesus spoke that I am the light of the world. But the context of this is very, very interesting because a chapter before this, it says that Jesus and his disciples went to the Feast of Booths. This was a feast or a festival that every year the Jewish people would celebrate to remember the past. They would look back at the pillar of fire that guided their people in the desert. And during this festival, every night there was a thing called the illumination of the temple. So basically they had these 4 giant golden lamps that would light up the whole temple at night, and people would sing and dance and sing praises from the Psalms and Isaiah to remember the salvation that was to come, the light that came in the past, and the light that was to come. And in the context of that, Jesus comes forth in John 8, verse 12, and says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You see, Jesus was declaring that he was the presence of God, that he was the salvation of God coming down to be that for the world. And his salvation wouldn't just free them from the tyranny of the Egyptians and the slavery that existed, but it would free them from sin and evil and darkness. And here's a wonderful promise. He says, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness. Whoever follows me will have the light, will have me. If you follow me, you have me. And this is a beautiful thing because in Matthew 5:14, Jesus literally calls the church the light of the world. The same light of the world that you see right here. When we become followers of Jesus, we become light bearers, reflecting Jesus to the world that we live in, to this dark, evil world. And there's so many verses that speak to this. I'm going to share a couple. In the very same Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 9, it says, the true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. And then in John chapter 3, verse 21, but whoever does what is true comes into the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. God, help us to be the light to the world. Help us to be like you, Jesus, and help us to follow you, to not walk in darkness, but to have the light of life, to have you to the end of age. Amen.